Okay, so now we get into the more meatier stuff. This is where it gets complicated. I'm going to do this one because I'm not going to show everything with this one. What I just did here in terms of like that weather stripping and trim and stuff applies to this in a lot of places as well. So you can use that same kind of rationale to do things like this and that, and the weather seal. I don't think this one has the weather seal on the door, but some of them, in some cases they do. There's around the windows in the bus. There's a bunch of weather stripping around the bus windows and trim that can be removed, and things like that. So you can just use that idea and take out what you feel. But what we're going to get into, that's going to be the more complicated one, is this one. Oops, I don't need the door. Okay. So this is, in most cases, the cars have this interior slash undercarriage and everything. And here's where we get into the really interesting stuff about what they have in here that you probably don't need, or I don't need, and an example of how to. I'm going to bring this over a little more fully because we need to see this. So for my purposes, I'm looking at things from a standpoint of what can be seen from outside and above. Okay, so you got to realize that the hood's going to be here. So almost all of this green stuff on top is not ever going to be seen unless you open the hood. And in this particular case, they don't have this model in a way that the hood can be opened. It is, but it's in the rig, and we have to go through. You'd have to go through that, and I haven't worked that up yet to see if that'll work. If you can get a static mesh out of the rig where the hood is there, that can be opened, or the trunk, then you can rotate those into position and save that as a static mesh. But as I understand it, those if you save a static mesh out of the rig, there's no interior on the hood and the trunk lid. So if you open them up too far, they're one-sided. They only have a mesh, or they only have material on the outside, not the inside. So it's kind of tricky on how that would be used if you could use that. But in this case, we're going to have, the body's going to sit over top of this, and none of this stuff is going to be seen. Because the only part that's going to be seen, besides the interior part here, is going to be, let me do over here, for my purposes again, because I'm looking to do, what just happened here? Oh, I did something wrong. Okay, here we go. There. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing. I got to rotate that first. There we go. Is I need to see what's going to be underneath. Because if the car is destroyed or takes damage or whatever and gets flipped over, then this stuff is applicable. Now you'll notice there's no engine, and I'm not putting the engines in these for my purposes, because by the time you put the body on, you'll then have something underneath there. Well, maybe unless the hood's invisible. But so you got to kind of judge what's going to work from that standpoint of what other pieces will fit over top, because the body may have a panel that fills in this area, for instance. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of how much of this do I need to represent when I start distorting it and damaging it, because I'm going to go use the lattice editor to basically distort this, or whatever way you want to do it. But how much of this is going to be seen, can be seen from up here, from above, or above relative to when it's flipped over. So for me, and my purposes, a lot of this isn't necessary. I'm looking at things like this right here, this box here, this here, part of the frame. These linkages I don't think I need, although they're not bad to keep. They probably would be seen, but I think I'm going to get rid of them because, again, we're looking at things from a standpoint of what's going to be most prominent, At least, again, this is my criteria. It's like what is going to really be seen versus what's going to just kind of, get lost in the shuffle. How much fidelity do you need? Most of this back here will stay. This one does not have a lot of leaf spring. It just has a couple. I might keep those then. But some vehicles have a ton, like a huge, thick leaf spring system. And in that case, I usually get rid of those, or most of them, and keep like just the bottom one here. The bottom, like this is a good one. These two bottom ones, you can even see there's a bracket for it here, and they don't have it modeled for the rest. So you have, so keeping these two, the long one and the short one, makes sense, because then when you look at it, yeah, you've got a nice big fat piece here that represents the frame, and again, if you distort this in some way, it'll look really cool and damaged. Or at least you can tell what it is. So like I said, we're going to do it from that standpoint. So for my purposes, what I'm going to be looking at doing is taking out pretty much, I wouldn't say everything. Well, maybe I will take everything. Well, yeah, I think I will take that. So I'll probably take this out, and it depends also on what's connected to what. Some of these pieces are really large, single pieces that if you want to take them out, you'd have to do more of a triangle mesh edit as opposed to like the more object-based one I'm doing here. But just about all of this stuff can go. All that green stuff can go. That's on the top, with what amounts to being on the top of the engine. I think I'm going to take these control arms out and the coil springs for sure, but I'll keep the posts, maybe. So anyway, so whatever criteria you use, but what I want to show really more than anything on this, because you can use whatever criteria you want and go through the model and figure out what you want to take out. But I want to point out some things, trick-wise, that are really weird about how they put these together. Like I said, they over-modeled these severely. So there are a number of really small, little tiny things all over the place that you can take out that you do not need. Oops. Let me get this a little bit. Let's do 1.5. Get this as small as you can tolerate too, because as you'll get in tight and tighter and tighter in here. All right, so here's a good example. So, nut. Now that connects to a whole bunch of other things. Might keep that, might not, but let's see if we can find another nut type thing here, like this. Yeah, I would definitely want to get rid of that. And what you can do is you can start taking out the obvious stuff, and then, because you can't really put it back except to Control Z, to undo. So if you go past a certain thing and you've deleted it and gone a couple steps down the road, you're done. You're not going to get it back. You can't really add them back in. So you really want to be looking at things from, cut as little as possible, or the obvious stuff first, and then tweak down from there. Let's see if the coil, okay, I'm getting rid of the coils. A word on using this modeling tool, they don't really tell you a lot of this stuff. I've done a lot of trial and error. If you click on something, you can hit escape once to undo it. But if you click escape twice, you'll cancel the whole thing. So if you have a whole bunch of stuff that you've deleted, you'll undo all that. So be very careful. If you click something and you'll see, okay, this is another thing too. When you move this around, you see how it kind of sticks, at least in this particular model mode, how it kind of changes its orientation. See, there's nothing over here because I'm not over the model. When I get over the model, you see how it kind of flips to, kind of switches around to like a different plane or what have you. It's trying to pick like a face kind of a thing. So if you click something and it doesn't do this, it doesn't highlight, and you're not sure if you hit escape will undo everything you just did, click something else that you know, or get something positive to color in like that, then hit escape. That's a good tip for making sure you don't accidentally escape out of something where you thought you clicked something and there was nothing really actually selected, and then you undid everything you've just done. So that's one thing. You can also Control Z in steps back. So if you do this and delete it, you can Control Z to get that one thing back. So that does work. You have to then hit accept. This can take a while on these. This is a 400,000. Well, this one's not that big, but it's come on 100,000 some on pixels or triangles. But something like the bus, that's 3 million, takes a couple. I've got a 12-core system here, and it takes a few minutes or a couple minutes when you hit accept for it to finally finish processing and make the mesh available so you can save it. So be patient on when you click accept. It's not very fast. And this piping. And then another thing you can do, just to give an example here. So if you see there's a bunch of pieces here. These are all connected pieces. It's not one piece. So if you click on one end here, and you click and drag, be sure to stay over the mesh. Don't stray outside the boundaries because you'll end up picking up the thing in the back behind it. But if you stay within the mesh, within the mesh, I should say, within the object, and you continue to the next piece, it will selectively pick them consecutively. You just have to be very careful not to go outside the boundary, or you'll grab the thing in the background. I did that a couple times and ended up losing, not noticing it, and ended up losing, something that I was very important. I'd gone past it, saved it, gone past it, didn't notice it till many steps later, and then it was like, oops, I can't, that can't be gotten back then. So just be careful about that part of it. I'm also going to get rid of, in this case, the wipers because they're too thin and are not going to be seen enough to make a difference in what I'm doing. And there's quite a bit of savings in these. The mirrors, if you want to really save a ton, get rid of the mirrors because those have a lot of curved, especially on the truck, the semi, and the bus. This is not the exterior, but the mirrors, the arm that holds the mirrors, it connects it to the body on the bus and stuff, is all like this. It's all like a little small curved surface, and it's a lot of polygons. You end up saving a ton with those. Okay, but these are just the mass parts. Let's get into something a little more detailed. So we are looking at, there's a bolt, again, not really going to be seen. And I'm trying to find some better examples of the nuts. Here we go. These, you're going to see a ton of these. I get rid of, oops, see there, I just selected something I didn't, yeah, see, I picked the wrong thing. So if you're close to something else, it may pick the wrong thing. You got to be real careful about your positioning. This is what they don't tell you about how this tool works, is that, and I'm going to escape that, is that, like, I went to look at this, but I was right next to or even inside of another piece, and so it didn't really select them. So you got to get a position that lets you actually get an angle on the thing to be able to see how it changes like that, to make sure you're picking the right object. Sometimes when you're working inside of parts of the vehicle, like inside of a channel like this, trying to pick something, it gets very tricky. Now, see, I questioned something like this. What is that? Does that go through? Oh, that might be the gear shift, which I do want to get rid of in this case. I'm getting rid of all of the, again, that gear shift is a very expensive piece. These would be costly in terms of polygons. Because, again, these interior details are not going to be seen on what I'm trying to do. So get rid of this. And another one is the pedals. Same thing. We got a number of polygons. But that, again, you're not going to see these pedals unless you have the door open and some way to look in. Another good one is this. This is a floor mat. But there's a floor there anyway. So the floor mat doesn't matter. I mean, well, again, for what I'm trying to do. So these are also pretty costly. I'm trying to get through a couple layers of this, then I can show the polygon count so you can get an idea of how much difference there is. I think I'm going to get rid of that too, because that doesn't really add anything to what I need to do. This one does not have vents, which is weird because a lot of them have vents. But if they have dashboard vents, they're going to be like a, rectangle with a bunch of horizontal slats, and they're all individual little pieces, so you can definitely get rid of those and save some stuff. Now, I'm not really wanting to work on the interior at this moment. I'm still trying to show you guys something else here. Again, that small of a bolt from any distance is just not going to be seen. This one actually has a very simple undercarriage by compared to a lot of others. I'm also partially trying to clean this up again so that the features that I do want to stand out, that represent the damage, stand out better. Now we can look at something like, okay, that's a whole differential piece. Yeah, I can take that out because that still leaves the primary thing intact. So even though technically it's not right, again, we're deleting a lot of stuff that they model in a way that's like, yeah, technically that's how that looks. Technically these things exist on the real car, or a car like this that this is modeled after, but we don't need that. And we'll do that, and we'll do that. So you start seeing, again, we're taking away the stuff I know I'm going to want to get rid of, and then we start seeing if there's any other things. And then you start also seeing what parts of these might be individual separable parts as opposed to whole pieces. Like, is this just a separate piece? Yes, it is. So it's a rib, and again, you may decide to keep it or not. But so, you might keep these ribs. I think I'll probably keep them because they don't look too expensive. I might get rid of this central one though. But that's, you would want to experiment to see, okay, is this a separable part? Is this piece separable from this? Or is it all one molded unit? And that's what you have to experiment with on these models. Okay, so let's just do a quick look here at what we got. So the original mesh is 165,000 triangles. And the reduction we've done so far is 126,000. So we've saved 40,000 triangles just with all that nonsense. That's pretty considerable. And I think I can get this down to under 100K in the end with what I want to take out. And I'm not even close to being done with the stuff I got to do here because there's a whole bunch of other little things to take out, to look at. I think that's going to go. Sometimes these pieces might be separate parts, and sometimes they're all part of this whole casing, so we'll have to see about that. But all this stuff adds up. That's the point, is that all these little, this thing and this nut and this little piece, if it's separate, and those pins. I really wish really wish they would have had, they've got just solid pins here, but the biggest thing in some of these cars is they'll have an actual ball joint differential type thing here. Inside where this pin is will actually be like a round ball joint. That, if you're doing this type of process, can be gotten rid of because it'll look just like, let me show you what it'll basically look almost exactly like having this pin out. You'll just have, like having that pin out. Took that pin out, and you end up with just so you take that pin out, there's a gap there, but you can't really tell from any distance really that, unless you're really looking at it. So so those pins are not too expensive, But the ball joint, when there's an actual round ball joint in there, that is a big savings in terms of polys. So it's stuff like that that you can do. So for this particular thing, I'm going to go ahead and stop and restart the video. I'm going to edit this down to where I want it and come back when we do the body. This one might not be too complicated to edit, so I hope I picked a good one to have not a lot of things to remove. So we'll do the body, a little bit of stuff on the body and show some things there, and then we'll show about putting it all together.